Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. It's Arlene and Katie, as usual. Katie, what is the news from Iowa? Is there hay?
If anyone has really reached a state of Zen existence, especially in their relationship or their relationship with themselves or their relationship with their family, neighbors, whoever, whatever, about the emotional turmoil, even more so than planting and harvest, of when to cut hay, especially in places like the Midwest where the weather can be quite unpredictable and variable. And dealing with the emotional fallout of the whiplash that comes along with, we should have cut hay yesterday. Oh, thank God we didn't cut hay yesterday. That guy has his hay down. We don't have our hay down. That poor sucker has his hay down. We don't have our hay down, etc., etc., etc.
Right, yeah. Or then the hay is cut and then the baler doesn't work, or the rake isn't working, or one of the tractors goes down. And yeah, we're doing hay right now too.
Or somebody rakes not the way you wanted them to rake or not when you wanted them to rake, or they start raking and it starts raining or gets windy, or they turn it too far over, or, if you do your hay differently than we do, I assume there are equivalent.
There's lots of ways to do it, right and wrong.
And all of them are wrong, unless they're right.
So yeah, it's hay time.
But also it is not. But also by this afternoon it might be, but maybe not. And as a reminder, mostly to myself, pointing out that hay has never not gotten done at all is not real helpful. No, it turns out it's not. It's not a real encouraging thing to point out in the moment.
Right. And I guess, I am not the one making the decisions about when these things happen. So I suppose that I will also keep that opinion to myself.
How are things at your place, Arlene?
Well, yep, hay is happening. The dry hay version. There seems to be less stress with the wrapped hay version. I mean, obviously it goes quicker. It doesn't have to be so dry. Bale it and get it under cover quickly. So yes, we had a little stretch of what hopefully was, going to continue to be dry for another day or so, because there's a lot of bales to pick up, but some hay happened. It's going to come in soon. It'll be undercover, and then we can stop thinking about those particular fields for a few weeks. My husband and I actually went away for a few days, which was exciting, on an airplane. Not the most exotic location, but somewhere we'd never been before, so that's always fun. My husband is on a provincial board of directors, and they were having a meeting in Thunder Bay. So not a huge agricultural area, although more so than we thought. There are about 20 dairy producers up there, kind of within range of the city. It's in far northwestern Ontario. And well, I guess there's lots way further north, but not a whole lot further west than there. But lots of nice scenery, and we got to meet some new people. And so we did some farm tours and then some of the local tourist attractions, which are mostly around very cool looking landscapes. So that was neat. And then we did actually take an extra day after the rest of the group went home. It was the rest of the group, we flew on one day, they had a meeting on the middle day, and then they flew home the next day. We added one more day to that. And so we did a couple of extra things, went to a provincial park and went to, one of those kind of like historical reenactment type locations. So it was about the fur trade. So, if you need to know about trading furs in the 1800s, hit me up. I have an hour or so worth of some very earnest young people's knowledge that they shared with us. I don't know if I would want to work that job, but I love the kinds of kids, I call them kids, they're probably in their 20s, who, like, want to dress up and share what they know about history with tourists. I just think it is so fun. Sometimes awkward because it was just my husband and I in the tour group, so they were very attentive. So there were 2 tour guides and the 2 of us, so we got all of our questions answered, but that was pretty cool.
Do you think it would be less, I don't want to say unsettling, but unnerving perhaps if you didn't have your own teenagers who might be earnest to other people, but generally don't engage with you that way?
No, I don't think so necessarily. I could kind of, like, see the type of characteristics that would, you know, that I'm assuming they're probably history students or, like, maybe even drama students. There's a particular quality about them that was quite charming.
Oh no, I just meant more, was it unsettling because teenagers were actually like paying attention to you?
Oh, no, I'm all right with that. I can engage with the teens. They're not all intimidating. And in, somewhat shocking news, because it doesn't seem to be the way for most travel these days, our flights mostly went according to plan. So that was kind of nice. And there is something really nice about a small airport because we had returned our rental vehicle, got through security, and got something to eat in like under half an hour. So that was pretty nice. So we're glad that we didn't go the full 2 hours ahead because then you're sitting with the same group of people. There's 3 gates in this little airport, so not a whole lot going on, but it's very cute and efficient. We just flew right through, and yeah. So then came home, did hay. That's kind of the summary of it. And Father's Day happened. So as per usual, my husband was doing hay on Father's Day. Was Jim doing hay on Father's Day?
No. Jim and his dad were, I think, arguing about Hey on the Father.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that is the appropriate.
It was raining. It was one of those days yesterday where, we have an indoor outdoor weather station thing. And I looked at the temperature outside yesterday on June 15th at like 7 a.m. and it was like 68 degrees out Fahrenheit, whatever. And I was like, oh, that's not too bad. And I went outside and then I came back in and I looked and it was 98% humidity, which explained why it didn't look like it was raining, but it sure as shit felt like it was raining when I went outside. I showered yesterday about lunchtime and I think I finally dried out about 9 o'clock this morning, even with the air conditioning running, because Midwest, yay. But no, we are ready to do hay as soon as it stops raining for more than an hour or two. Is where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's right. All right. After all that hay talk, why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest for this week?
All right.
Today, we are excited to be talking to Kiah Twisselman-Burchett, who is joining us from Kentucky. So we get to cross another state off of our list. I think I was trying to do a count before we started. I think this is state number 37. So we're very excited to have you with us, Kiah. And we start all of our interviews with the exact same question. So this is for our listeners to get to know you. And we always ask, what are you growing? So let's just get right into it. What are you growing?
Oh, well, the most important thing I'm growing this year is I created my first human. It was a hard work, but I brought her into this world.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Proud. She is 4 months old. Her name is Callaway. So she is the most important thing here on our little urban farm. But my husband and I live here in Louisville, Kentucky, which to me, as someone who grew up really rural, feels like the big city. But we live on 6 acres and we have our own, we're calling it an urban farm. So we're growing all sorts of things here on our little urban homestead, from pumpkins and watermelons to sweet corn to all sorts of different veggies, including some California favorites from my home county. And we're going to have our own farm stand this year. So, two farm kids living in the city trying to get back to our ag roots any way that we can, but most importantly, growing that sweet little girl.
I love it. So is this the first year of the farm stand?
So we moved to this house. We bought our first house here a little over a year ago. So we did put in a crop last year, but it was very much an experimental year. We decided that if we got a single ear of corn, it was going to be a success. And we got lots more than that. In fact, we overproduced. We still have a freezer full that right before we're about to harvest our next load. So lesson learned there. But this will be our first year where we actually have a planned out farm stand at the end of our driveway for our local community here. Last year, my husband, it was like towards the end of our sweet corn season, and he's like, I'm just going to put out a folding table with sweet corn and see what happens. And he sold $67 of sweet corn that day. And you would have thought that this man had just won the lottery. He was so over the moon excited. And he said, this is proof of concept. Next year, we're going to build out a farm stand. So I just finished putting in all of our drip irrigation in the garden, which was my project this year. So now I can shift gears towards what I think is going to be more of the fun part, which is building out the farm stand and coming up with some fun merchandising ideas for our little farm stand this year.
So, Kiah, A, put pictures of the baby out there. That's the best marketing I've found as someone who's done direct sales with the baby. The year I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, like I found out I was pregnant like a week before farmer's market started. It was a long summer. But I would put her playpen like literally just next to the table right at the front of the tent. And we got so much business that way because people are like, look at that sweet baby. And then, they'd feel like they had to actually buy something because they'd been staring at my kid.
I love that.
I probably shouldn't brag about like commoditizing my child like that, but kids are expensive. So
No kidding. Well, I was just talking to my husband. We use a little hand corn planter because we have, we don't, my husband does want to get a tractor, but we don't need a massive tractor, right? And so we use this old, probably vintage corn planter, and it's not perfect. So we have to thin out our corn because it overseeded. And my husband just said this, but he's like, I can't wait until Callaway's old enough to use her little hands to help this process, earn her keep, pay for those diapers.
my daughter's face this year, she's 8, and when I told her that we had had kids so she could pull lambs because her hands are a lot smaller than mine, she was pretty into it. My son, not so much. Like, she's definitely the farm kid around here. She was down.
I love that.
So what does your husband do for his quote unquote real job that he says things like proof of concept?
Yeah, great question. My husband is a lobbyist. So he is a lobbyist here he works for Farm Credit Mid America, so an ag lending bank, an ag lender, and he is their state lobbyist. So he works in a 6-state region here, but he's been in the lobbying policy space in agriculture basically since he graduated from college.
And I know that your full-time job is not growing sweet corn. So what is your non-urban farmstead career?
Yeah. My full-time job is I am a motivational speaker. So, what I love so much about that career, which was not something that I sought out, it kind of sought me out, happened very organically. What I love so much about that is that it is a career that allows me to be home with my sweet baby girl, growing our urban farm here, while also getting to travel the country and travel the world and inspire people, but just to be really present. I am very grateful for me right now that I didn't have to rush back to a 9 to 5 job, that I really get to be here with her and bring her along for the adventure. And that's going to, I'm going to have to learn how that looks as she continues to get older and a little more mobile, but that is my full time job. Yep. Motivational speaking.
So, Kaya is someone who, for whatever reason, has a hard time being motivated a fair amount of the time. What do you do when you don't fucking wanna? Because I feel like as a motivational speaker, it's probably hard to accept just like, I don't wanna. Because, I mean, I'm assuming we all have those days, no matter what.
Yes, can confirm I too am a human being, just like everyone else. So, first of all, I love this question because the things that the audiences I speak to are struggling with are the exact same things that I'm struggling with. And really, any words of motivation or wisdom that I have to share from the stage are ones that I have learned in the trenches of navigating myself and continue to relearn over and over and over again. I think it's interesting. I feel like so much of my life is having to relearn the lesson with just like different flavors of what that lesson is. And I think that maybe sometimes we have this idea of like, oh, motivational speakers, in order to be a motivational speaker, you have to have it all figured out, right? You're the person that's supposed to be sharing all the wisdom. And what I have discovered is that in order to be a motivational speaker, you would just have to be willing to talk about the same things that everybody else is struggling with too. And I think the more that I actually open myself up to the vulnerabilities of not having it all figured out, that is where the good stuff actually lies. Trust me, I do not have it all figured out, but I'm willing to talk about the hard things that all of us are navigating. Really, universally when we feel like we're alone in it. And just being willing to talk about things and opening up the conversation offers motivation in itself. If somebody in the audience can be like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one here, that in itself is wildly powerful.
I know for myself, at least, when I do run into folks who really want you to think they know what's going on and that they have it all together, it's so obnoxious because I don't want to hear about how you're perfect. You're already perfect. Like what am I going to connect to here? What am I going to gain from this? And I feel like with the process of developing this podcast and the more we reach out to people, there's so many things that we're taught not to talk about, and it turns out that once one person like opens that subject up, people have a lot to say about a lot of very vulnerable things and a lot of very intense personal things that I mean, I'm certainly not here to tell people the right way to do things, but if I can, warn them about a few things I tried that didn't work, so much the better. And I think that being able to bring people that vulnerability and to be able to bring that honesty to people can be so much more helpful and more motivating than people who are just like, my life is already perfect. Like, cool. You know?
Absolutely. And the other thing is I feel like people that claim or have this air about them where they're like, "I have it all together. I know the answers. This is how you need to do life." I just really smell a big whiff of bullshit. You know what I mean? Like if someone is trying to claim that they've got it figured out, I'm like, "Ooh, you are insecure about something here."
Right, you're trying too hard.
Yes, you're trying too hard. And I just think that the people that are most impactful are people who are the most real. And one beautiful example of that is somebody who I really love. Like I love all of her books. I love her Netflix special. I love everything she shares is Brené Brown. Are you all familiar with Brené Brown?
Yep.
And one thing that I love about Brené Brown and that keeps me coming back to listening to her is, well, I mean, number one, she's got credentials, right? But number two is that she's not afraid to be like, God, I hated that I had to learn this in the research because damn it, I struggle with this constantly. And this is not what I wanted to have to learn about myself. And I just appreciate that she is so real about like, this is what the research has taught me. And this is what I still don't know as a human being who's experiencing the world. And I just think that that's so refreshing. And I just think the more that our world opens up to different people, to different ideas, to different perspectives, I think that the thing that we're not, I think that some of us still want to find people who can give us the answers, right? A lot of us are still seeking the answers. And we like this idea of someone being able to prescribe us, tell me what to do in order to solve this problem. But I really think that the thing that most of us need is not the answers. The thing that we need is to ask ourselves better questions to learn how to find the answers within ourselves. And that's really what I aspire to do as a speaker or as a coach is to offer people better questions so they can find the answer within themselves and get more compassionately curious about themselves and the world.
Arlene, I think you can just go ahead and mark that as our quote to pull out because that feels good. It feels like Kiah to me in a lot of ways. It feels like I'm not going to ask someone who inherited hundreds of millions of dollars for like business advice because all they've done is not lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Like that's not really a skill you should be super proud of unless you're a farmer. Farmers should be able to lose hundreds of millions of dollars with no trouble.
Agreed.
But like you haven't done anything. All you did was be born into a family where at some point somebody did something. Like that's not and for the same reason I don't want to talk to that person who's already got probably actually does not already have a perfect life but won't admit it. Like if you can't be honest with yourself, you're not going to be honest with me. And I overshare on this podcast because that's who I am. Like this is not a conscious decision to step outside my comfort zone. This is just who I am. And I am so uncomfortable with people who act like they have their shit totally figured out because it makes everyone else feel so insecure and so not up to the challenge. So besides Brene Brown, who else do you go to for motivation or answers or
Ooh, this is a good question. Okay, I would say that when I think about people that I go to for better questions, I mean, one of the first people that pops into my mind is Mel Robbins. And I think she's just like really everywhere right now. But I think she's someone who asks a lot of good questions and she's got a really inspiring personal story. But there is a woman who I connected with her online through a mutual friend, and she has a book. Her name is Allison Faulkner, and she has a book called You're Already Awesome. And I think this was kind of like my introduction to, or my exit from, the self-helpy personal development world into this world of, I would say, more like self-exploration, where I was getting curious about myself, not as someone who was like, what are all my flaws and problem areas that I want to improve and fix? And it was more of this like invitation to realize, what are all the things that already make you a really awesome, phenomenal person? And how can we create more space for self acceptance and self compassion and curiosity? And how can we be more authentically ourselves instead of trying to like fix this? And Alison Faulkner's book was really just this beautiful invitation to like be more open-minded to that. Another group of people that I would say do that really well, that are all about asking better questions, is the We Can Do Hard Things podcast with Glennon Doyle, Abby, and her sister, who they lovingly call sister. I think that they do such a beautiful job of being really vulnerable, about asking better questions, about inviting all sorts of different perspectives in such a authentic way, and I find it so refreshing. And that's really more of what I'm craving now, is more of that, Katie, that willingness just to like overshare and let your humanness be seen and witnessed. What a different world we would live in if we normalized normal shit, right? You know what I mean? And I think that that's what I'm craving more of, is like every time that I open myself to an area that feels vulnerable and tender, I'm always welcomed by other women saying, "Oh my gosh, me too, same." And there is so much healing that can be met in that normalization of normal human experiences and like the normal ebbs and flows of life, right? Like there are going to be weeks, days where I'm like, I feel really good. I feel like life is wonderful and great. And then, the next week I'm like, wow, I'm really in the trenches of it. I'm really backsliding into some not so self-compassionate thoughts and feelings. And what if that's not a problem? What if just being aware of this is the solution to like creating more space for my humanity?
Podcasts are free to listen to, but they aren't free to create. Katie and I would appreciate your support as we work to build the Barnyard Language community.
Patreon is an easy way for you to make a contribution that goes directly to making the show. As a member of our Patreon community, you get to watch the video version of our weekly updates, complete with questionable hairstyles and clutter. With 3 levels of support, you can choose a tier that works for you.
Keep the podcast going by becoming a patron today at patreon.com/barnyardlanguage.
I feel like, too, there's such a difference between, I'm big on the self-help for very specific topics, like John and Julie Gottman on the marriage front, amazing. Books about how to get my kids to effing listen would probably be amazing if I took the time to read them. Things like that, like, fantastic, because there are people for whom this is their life's work. But there's so many books that are just like, why are you the worst person in the world? And why would I not only give up the small amount of free time I have, but pay money to be told how much I suck? I mean, I can go on Facebook and be told how much I suck. I don't need to like give somebody money and spend 10 hours of my life listening to their book to be told that I'm the worst. Like, why would I do that?
And it's so interesting too, because I feel like I became a little bit of a self-help junkie when I first started my health journey back in 2018. And I would say the book that comes to mind that I used to share a lot about when I first started, sharing more online and sharing more from the stage, was the book that was kind of like my introduction into the self-help world, which was Rachel Hollis's Girl Wash Your Face. And at the time, that book had a message for me that I needed at a time I was ready to receive it. And the main one in that book was, it's your choices that got you here. If you want something different for your life, it's your choices that are going to get you somewhere else. And that really was this like click in my head, kind of like, your mom telling you stuff when you're growing up and you're like, okay, yeah, mom, sure. And then later you're like, oh shit, she was so right. I just was not ready to receive that advice yet. And so I would say that that kind of was like this spark, right? That kind of helped me take more ownership of my own life and my own destiny and what I wanted. But I think if I were to go back and read that book now from the lens I'm in now, I would not probably feel the same way about that book as I did then. And I kind of like self-helped myself to death in a way, kind of like what you said, where I just was using it as a way to like find more things wrong with me. And then I realized, like, what if, hear me out, what if I realized I wasn't a problem to be solved? And what if I just like explored more of who I actually am, separate from the way I was conditioned to be, and continue to condition myself to be? And I think that I would say, like, for so many other women, I would say fantasy romance novels helped me get out of that self-help hole. And thank goodness for that. There's nothing against self-help. I'm all about seeking the support and finding more information and resources, but I just think the lens in which we consume content of any kind is really, really important.
So you mentioned that you didn't go into becoming a motivational speaker, it kind of happened to you. So I mean, you've referenced that time in your life, but what kind of was it that led you to that path, and how have you changed your approach but stayed in the same career? Because some people, like if they get into it in a certain way, then they're like, well, that's not me anymore, and so I have to exit and do something else. But how have you kind of modified your approach but stayed in the same career?
I really love that question because I think that that's something that's so interesting about having a public platform in which your brand is yourself, because as a human, we are constantly evolving and learning and growing and expanding, and doing that while being witnessed by an online community who maybe found you at a certain time in your life where you were a different version of who you are now is an interesting thing to navigate, because you gain fans, you lose fans, you people find you in this certain season because that's where they're at, and then you evolve and they're somewhere else. And it's a very interesting, tender way to process as a human, to do so publicly. And yet I think in that situation it's also helped inform how I show up now as a motivational speaker, and I've learned so much through that process. But the way that I kind of fell into it is, I guess the first thing I'll say is I have always loved to talk. So speaking, girl, give me a microphone, give me an audience of 2 people, give me a rock, I can talk. And that was just born and bred into me. And I, did all of the youth leadership ag things, 4-H, FFA, got all sorts of public speaking experience and training that I didn't think was going to, become useful in this way in my career. But I really started my career, my professional career, in communications and agriculture communications and marketing, which definitely gave me more experience for sure with public speaking, with advertising communications and whatnot. But the way that I really fell into motivational speaking started from sharing my own personal experiences and lessons online. At the time, I was working for the Kentucky Cattlemen's Association, and I had also started this health journey, which, again, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of where I began diving into this self-help, personal development, professional development, exploring entrepreneurship and what that could maybe look like for me. And as I was learning these tools, these things about mindset and mental well-being and all these different things, I was so fascinated and excited about it that I just wanted to share. I was like, this is amazing stuff that I wish I knew about sooner. I'm going to tell my friends and family about it. And that's really where it began. I had no intention of building this like platform. And I started sharing it online. People were really resonating. I actually had people asking me privately if I did coaching. And I said, well, no, but yes, because I'm a yes girl to a fault. I'm working on that. And I just kind of yesed my way into doing this life coaching thing on the side. And I guess, long story, much shorter, is the summer of 2020, I had been on this health journey. I had lost over 100 pounds in a year. People were really resonating with the things I was sharing. And the folks that work for Beef It's What's for Dinner, their marketing, their agency, said, hey, we love your story. Can we pitch it? And they had pitched my health transformation story to People magazine. And it was picked up the summer of 2020. Then it was picked up by Good Morning America, Access Hollywood, Women's Health, like this snowball of media exposure, summer of 2020, that did give me that literal, like, kind of, you get a platform overnight situation. I think I went to bed the night before Good Morning America and I had 4,000 followers, which was amazing. But I woke up the next morning and there was like 17,000 followers. And it was such an interesting experience because it kind of felt like I had suddenly stepped on stage in the spotlight and I was like, oh my God, there's a lot more people here watching me. I don't know what to say. Right. It felt overwhelming and intimidating. And the thing that also I don't talk about so much is the day that that happened was also the day that George Floyd was killed. And so I was handed this platform, an online community, at the same time that there was all of this social justice uprising happening. So then I also had all these people saying, you have a platform now, you need to use it, you need to use it to share. And I'm like, I didn't ask for any of this. I wasn't expecting any of this. And it was like such an interesting time to navigate. And I was so grateful for the experience, for the opportunity and for the exposure and for this really, I guess, invitation to kind of lean into the Coach Kiah brand that I was kind of building on the side. And I just started getting asked to speak on stages. And again, yes, girl, I kept saying yes. And I fell in love with the opportunity to connect with women and men, but mostly women all across the country. And I decided to shift gears away from my marketing communication career and really lean into doing marketing communications for myself.
So, Kaya, I'm going to add a question here. Looking at how pulled together you look, Arlene looks like she's not super fancy, but she's definitely dressed better than I am.
I'm wearing a Pingu shirt. I already showed this to her when I became a so it's not very formal.
I actually showered yesterday, so that's good. How do you I feel like on the off times that I do go out in public, especially for like women in ag, women in leadership sorts of things, like how can the rest of us, you look like someone that this might just come naturally to, dressing like an adult human. How can the rest of us improve this in a way that still feels authentic to who we are? Because I feel like when I go to a lot of ag leadership stuff, every woman in that room is dressed the same. And if that is legitimately how all of them want to be dressed, awesome. 100% here for it. There's nothing wrong with the way they're dressed. It's not a way that I am normally comfortable being dressed because I am a slobby t-shirts and yoga pants person, which is why I work from home and I'm very happy. But how do we find that sort of, I know a lot of women have sort of a uniform that is part of their brand. For instance, I was able to have supper with Temple Grandin quite a few years ago now, and she had, she always wears those Western shirts, and she had taken her shirt off because it was really hot out. She had a t-shirt underneath. I don't want to say that Temple Grandin was just like walking around topless with us. And we were taking pictures, and she said, "Oh, I have to put my shirt back on. That's how people know who I am." And I was like, you're right, because if I saw her in just anything but one of those button-down Western shirts with the neckerchief, I, I mean, I would still know who she is because I know who she is. But it is such a part of her brand. So I'm wondering how we can extend our brand to ourselves when we are the brand that we're putting out in the world, but in a way that still feels authentic to who we actually are. And especially when, you're a busy parent and you're shopping at like the same three stores that every other busy farm mom is shopping at because
Okay, first thing I want to say, Katie, is your uniform is also one of my uniforms as well. You caught me on a day that dad is working from home, so I got to shower in peace without a newborn sitting in a little bouncer right outside the shower curtain. So I decided to actually get ready today and wear some of the clothes that I own. But when it comes to our personal brand, I do think that how we dress, how we present ourselves can be an extension of our personal brand if we want it to. And I like to think about it as like I want it to be a fun project for people. And this is the thing. I know some people love clothes, love fashion, and some people are like, no, I don't care. I don't have the capacity to care. And that is okay too, right? Steve Jobs, right? His brand was the same t-shirt and pants, and that was his brand. He wanted to simplify it. It wasn't anything fancy, but it did kind of create this signature look for him, kind of like how Temple Grandin has her signature look that she's, recognized by. When it comes to my own personal brand, I think that lately, if you see me speaking on stage, I lean into bright, fun colors with a lot of flow and movement that are comfortable because I have found that it brings me joy when I dress that way and it's comfortable to do so on stage. But in order to kind of discover this personal brand of how I present myself, clothes I like to buy and wear, I definitely felt guilty of falling into the trap of what is everybody else wearing? And I do still buy trends. Don't get me wrong. I do still like to, stay current in some regards. But I found myself following the old dated rules that I was taught when I was younger about how a woman should dress her body to look smaller, right? It was avoiding stripes, especially if they're horizontal. It was about wearing dark colors because they would hide your curves. It was about dressing literally to try to shrink ourselves away. And I think this version of me who you meet now out in the world, you're like, she is not trying to hide. Girl, she is wearing bright ass yellow. She is being seen. And it is not about shrinking myself. It is about wearing like big, bold, flowy things. It is about letting myself be present fully in my body. And the way that I discovered this version of myself is by asking myself, what did I like to wear when I was a little girl? The other day, when I say the other day, it was last year. I was speaking at an event and there was a photographer taking pictures. And I had just bought this really cute yellow dress that had this cowgirl print all over it, like cute pinup style, like vintage cowgirl all over it. It was kind of like a 50s pinup girl kind of style cut. So fun, so cute. I was wearing this like bold red headband and some really funky heart earrings. And I looked at myself in the mirror as I was getting ready and I'm like, I recognize that girl. And I found a photo of myself. I think I was probably 10 years old at my county fair. And I was wearing my favorite yellow jumpsuit that was covered in floral print. And I said, oh, that's who she is. The version of me who is so confident in my clothes now, who is like willing to be bold and colorful, is actually just me remembering who the F I was before the world taught me how to be different, right? It was about coming back home to my inner child and being like, how did I like to express myself in a way that brought me joy and comfort and happiness as a little girl? And how can I give myself permission to do that again now as a grown ass woman? And I discovered that I liked a lot of the same things, you know? And so I think for anybody who I know who's trying to find, like, how do I find the clothes that make me feel my best? I think a really interesting place to start is asking yourself, what kind of clothes did I used to wear when I was a little girl? Because I enjoyed them.
That is such good advice. Thank you. Because I feel like I think part of my discomfort with it is it's like the one time that I worry about looking like a professional adult, which even in my professional adult life is not a real thing. And I know, like, I bought a book several months ago that is still sitting on this shelf, but I bought it simply because the title was I'm Wearing Tunics Now. And it was just about, coming to this point in your life of just being like, fuck it. Like, I'm dressing how I want to dress because it's my body and I'm the one who has to live in it. And I know, and I'll have to wait for the air conditioning to really kick on so I can go pull them back out. But I bought myself a pair of overalls with they're bright teal and they have capybaras wearing witch hats and doing like little potions all over them.
Love it.
And they're the most ridiculous thing. And I am not a small person. And so it's a lot of capybaras. My 8-year-old would totally wear them. My 8-year-old and I have a lot of matching clothes, to be honest. And the number of compliments I get, not from women my age generally, because I'm 44, but from women in their 20s and women in their 70s is astounding because more of women in both of those age groups are dressing however the hell they want. And it makes me really sad for women who are still in this, like, and including myself as one of them, like, I have to dress like a respectable adult because otherwise no one will respect me. And even as someone who fully believes this, it's still hard to remember that if someone's judging me as being not important or not serious because I'm wearing overalls with little animals all over them, that's on them. Like, that's because they're in a place in their life where that's the easiest thing to make a decision on.
I think too in this that part too, Katie, though, that element of making a decision, that this middle part of our lives where we're raising kids and trying to get them into clothes and trying to get clothes onto our bodies that actually fit. And, are hopefully comfortable, or the thing that fit either yeah, myself or my child last week doesn't fit anymore. It's so hard to keep ahead of what to put on our bodies, and it just becomes the thing that becomes least important. So it's easy to blend in for a while, but yeah, hopefully we get to that stage, or get to that comfort level where you find the thing that makes you happy, and you can, you're in a place financially and emotionally where you can go ahead and buy it, and then also have an opportunity to put it on.
You know what I think is
Well, I mean, too, sorry, Kiah, it's easy for me to say this as I am wearing a worn out gray t shirt and yoga pants that I'm sure used to be black while we're having this discussion. But it is, when you have the opportunity to be able to wear something that makes you feel good.
I think it's interesting too because you mentioned that it's one thing to know, like, okay, I know logically that if anybody judges me for what I'm wearing today, it's more about them than it is about me. But it's another thing to logically know that and to also trust that in your body as you're experiencing stepping out into the world, wearing something a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because we still are hardwired to want to fit into the community, right? So the idea of other people judging us feels like a threat to our wellness and well-being. So it's like getting your body and your brain to kind of catch up so that you can live authentically into that experience and not just logically know that it's not about you if people are judging you, but to also feel confident in yourself and your body that that is true and real and I can still be my authentic self in this space. And I think what's so interesting is when we when you see someone in the world who is living their authentic self, who is wearing something that is maybe so bold and audacious and out there and different and funky that makes you turn your head, when I see someone doing that, I have nothing but so much respect for them, even if it's something that I wouldn't wear. But people that judge, oh my gosh, I cannot believe she's wearing that. I think it is from this set place of insecurity that people judge other people. And it's also, I think, from this deep sense of maybe a little bit of jealousy, oh man, they have the audacity to be wholly themselves in a world that threatens to judge them. And I envy that they can do that and I can't. So I'm going to judge them for it.
I will say it's, oh,
And I will say too, as a mother of teens, sometimes the people judging you might live in your house.
Ooh, yeah. I'm not at that stage yet, but man, that sounds fun.
I'm not speaking necessarily of mine, but we don't also want to embarrass our kids too much sometimes. So, keep the keep some of the outfits under wraps until I'm not going out with them.
I will say too, in defense of people who wear dark colors, I have one friend who only wears black, and she looks tremendous because it is her thing, and that is what makes her happy, and I fully support it. But
Totally.
if you're wearing it because it makes you look thinner, or if you're wearing it because it makes you look thinner and somebody told you that you needed to look thinner, or somebody told you whatever other bullshit, it's bullshit. I mean, if you're wearing it because it legitimately brings you joy, then do it.
So, we talk to people on this show at every stage of parenthood, and you are still in the relatively new stage, which I love because there's that perspective of you probably still remember the person you were before you had a child and what she was like, and now you know who you are now, and you're still changing into the new you. So what has the transition from not being a parent to being a parent been like for you?
Ooh, yeah. What a transition it has been. I like the way you frame that question because parenthood is still so new. And even though she's 4 months old, how in the hell does it feel like it's been 4 years and also just 4 days at the same time? I understand now how much time is so warped exponentially when it comes to parenthood. And I'm really feeling that right now in this season. Um, I would say thus far, parenthood has been one of the hardest things and the greatest gifts of my life in teaching me some of the lessons I've been trying to learn for a long time. And the biggest one right now for me in parenthood is I am a highly ambitious person. And the thing about being highly ambitious is that I think in my younger years, all the way up until my 30s, I think that I was really channeling that ambition in pursuit of success in the traditional sense of the way we think of success, right? Like accolades, being seen, having lots of followers, making money, meeting people, being on stages, like, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful. But I think that I let this like blind ambition drive me um, as a high achiever in a way that continued to lead me to burnout over and over and over again in my life. And when I got pregnant, first of all, I just didn't have as much gas in the tank when I was pregnant, right? So I had a limited amount of energy. So it helped give me clarity, I guess, towards what I wanted to be ambitious about. And now that my baby girl is here, it has given me so much more clarity about what do I want to be ambitious about in my life? How do I want to guide my ambition? And now it's I want to be ambitious in the pursuit of things that bring me peace. I want to be ambitious in pursuit of the things that give me more time freedom with my family. And it was parenthood that finally kind of helped me get a little bit clearer on that thing instead of seeing everything that other people are doing outside of me like, "Ooh, that would be cool. Ooh, I should try that. Ooh, I should reach for this." And I think that that has been such a beautiful gift for me. This gift of being forced to slow down and forced to get clear on things. And at the same time, I think one of the hardest things about that clarity is the fact that nothing else is clear anymore. Like every decision I have to make in my life is through the lens of, how old is she going to be at that stage? Or I don't know what she's going to be like. Do I want to put my kids in daycare? I don't know. Do I want to put them in regular school? I don't know. Like I felt like I had this vision of what my life was going to look like. And then when I became a mom, suddenly I'm like, the vision board is a little unclear, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, yeah. And you talked before about being, saying yes to everything. I think sometimes having kids gives us permission, but can also um, an excuse, depending on the opportunity, gives us permission to say no on behalf of someone else when you maybe couldn't say it for yourself. But then it can also give you an out when maybe you should say yes. So that becomes hard too, to decide, am I avoiding the thing and using my family as the excuse to not do it, or is that what I actually want to do?
Yeah, that's so real.
So we've already been talking about bodies, and I know that you are really open on social media about talking about bodies in a way that a lot of people don't. And through pregnancy and childbirth and postpartum, there are so many changes that, some are talked about and some seem like they come to as a surprise to everybody. Then you go and talk to other pregnant people who have been pregnant or given birth, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me too." But yeah, it's maybe not out there, or we don't want to talk about it or scare people, those types of conversations. And everyone's experience is so different, so it's hard to say this could happen to you, but maybe not. So like, don't worry about it, but if it does, like, it's normal, but it's not. So talk to your doctor. So how has this period of life changed how you feel about your body and how you talk about your body?
Man, bodies. The body conversation has been the forefront of my brain since I was a little girl, as it has been, I think, for most women in general. Um, I definitely grew up like a lot of us, and probably those of you listening in did, in a society that taught us that our bodies are problems to be solved, right? And everywhere we look, there is a solution for the problem. Melt the inches, shrink the cellulite, drop the pounds. And there was a period of time where I felt like things were kind of changing in the conversation. And I don't know, I see things online and on advertisements on TV all the time that make me realize that the body conversation still very much we still have a lot to work on when it comes to the body conversation. Um, Before going into becoming a parent, I think that one of the greatest gifts that I have experienced is struggling with my body image and working so hard to help heal that because it prepared me. I would say that my previous struggles with my body image
Yep.
uniquely prepared me for pregnancy and motherhood because I had already gotten to a place of acceptance in my body's changes, if that makes sense, or acceptance of the fact that I know because I've done the thing. I've lost the weight. I did the things that people told me to do to feel better about myself and realize that all of it is a bunch of bullshit and that how we feel about ourselves actually has very, very little to do with these external bodies. And I learned that lesson as someone who existed in a shrinking body, losing over 100 pounds. And I also learned that lesson in someone who had an expanding body, who gained a lot of that weight back even before getting pregnant. And I had learned the lesson of, oh, if I can love myself in a shrinking body, I need to learn how to love myself in a growing body too, because this body is going to continue to change. And I've always known that I wanted to be a mom. And so I always had this idea in my head of like, oh, I know that my body's gonna be totally different once I get pregnant. But I think I was like really mentally prepared for that. And I think more than being nervous about my body changing or getting bigger or stretching or whatever, all the things that we go through in pregnancy, I think I was more really excited about the empowering experience of seeing what my body could do to bring a human into this world. And so I think in that way, because I'd already gone through so much body grief in my life, it prepared me for the changes of pregnancy and motherhood in a way that I don't think a lot of women experience beforehand, or maybe they do. And so, that being said, I think for me, pregnancy and childbirth was this amazingly empowering experience in a lot of ways. And it made me appreciate women on an entirely different level, right? Like I appreciated moms before I became a mom, like I think most people appreciate moms, but like I didn't get it until I gave birth and I became a mom. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in the club now. It is different. Like once you go through that experience, there is just something that is so much different about it. But through that process, you're so right in that there's so much that's talked about in motherhood, and there's also so much that is not talked about in motherhood. Like for example, shaving your bush. Do you do it? Do you not do it? How unruly is it? Are other people doing things that I'm not doing? Should I be worried about this? Nobody else is seeing my bush, but my husband is. Does he care? I don't know. And like, it is so funny because after I gave birth, there have been two posts postpartum that went like mini viral, like hundreds of thousands of views. One of them was me and my daughter in a matching diaper in the hospital. And the second one was me talking about my bush. And so, does it make my husband uncomfortable that I am on the internet talking about such unhinged things? Yes, it does. Does he love getting blindsided by his female coworkers at work about how his wife is hilarious? And he's like, oh God, what did she post now? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I saw that one.
No, well, I don't always, have him approve things because what I've learned is he's not my target audience. He's
Yeah,
not gonna
that's
like
right.
it, but I'm like, the moms need this content, okay? They need to feel seen and heard. And every time I share something online where I'm like, I don't know if I should be talking about this, oh my gosh, the floodgates of mothers welcome to the conversation are open, and it is so beautiful. I have never met a more, I don't know, just loving and supportive and unhinged community than the mom community. And it is beautiful and magical. And now I'm sure that this mom community also has its fair share of like people who will shame and judge other moms. Thankfully, knock on wood, up to this point, I have mostly been met with nothing but compassion and just other people who see you. They're like, oh, yeah, I've been in there. You want to hear my birth story? Yeah, let's talk about how birthing a child is really just a big crotch party and everyone's welcome. At one point, I looked down, I'm like, there are 8 people right now at my vagina. Welcome. Come on in. Have a seat.
Nice to meet you all. I don't even know any of your names, but glad you're here.
I don't know what any of you guys are doing here. I don't know what your specialty is, but like I also don't care anymore at this point in time. And I just think that when I share something, the thing that I hear the most is from older moms who said, I wish there was someone like you talking about this when I was going through it.
I feel like too, Kiah is someone who has also had babies. And I had a scheduled C-section and then a repeat scheduled C-section. There's so many things that when you mention them, people are like, well, obviously X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, obviously not obviously X, Y, and Z because I'm not a stupid person. And if it didn't occur to me, then obviously it is not that obvious. Because I would like to think that if it were that obvious, I would have considered it. And why don't we warn people about these things? Like, it did not occur to me that postpartum bleeding would still happen with a C section or that it would still be that heavy. Like, I guess I assumed there'd be like a little maybe, but somehow in my mind, the bleeding was from the vaginal birth and not from the placenta ripping out of your body.
Yeah. Katie, I wouldn't have thought about that either.
I was a little shocked at what a and people mention bleeding. They don't mention how it may look like someone has been slaughtered the first time you get up and go to the bathroom and go pee. And there's just and especially having not had a vaginal birth, I can't speak to that. But the process of getting on and off a toilet hours post literally having an entire person removed through the muscles of your stomach and then everything kind of just like wedged back in there. I mean, it looks like a hospital. I was gonna say it looks like a hospital drama. It does look like a hospital drama, but like the one nobody wants to watch because there's nothing sexy or interesting about blood everywhere because you're trying to stand up from a toilet, but you can't stand up because they just, cut all through your muscles and you can't really feel your feet and and who you're a proper woman, so you're not gonna like leave a mess for anyone else to clean up, and just like nobody warned me about this. Nobody warned me about what happens when you wear size 11 shoes and then your feet get bigger. Like, they said, "Oh, your feet get bigger." And in my mind, I was like, well, I already have big feet. How much bigger would they possibly get? The answer is bigger than that. It is, and so I feel like there are just these things that, like, maybe you know them logically, but the fact that they could happen to you and that a lot of it you just won't give a shit about because whatever, that's just how it is, you know?
And I think there's also so much. One of the things that I think I was not expecting, because I think people don't want to talk about it online, is navigating like postpartum. I had a vaginal delivery and I had stitches, and like how afraid you are to get intimate again after giving birth. Or just like how okay, this is another conversation around bodies, no matter what kind of birth you experienced, is how do you feel sexy again in your body after giving birth? After going through all these hormonal changes, after also having a body that's kind of like in service to this other human, if you're breastfeeding, or even if you're not breastfeeding, it's like, how do you become present in your body again intimately with a partner? That is something that I felt like was an interesting journey that I went through that I don't think a lot of people talked about either. And I think part of it is too, I mentioned earlier, my husband doesn't love that I share things online. And I think there's even some things that I don't share online because it's an invitation for me to talk about somebody else who hasn't given consent to have that conversation publicly and openly, right? Which I think is maybe the reason we don't talk about the relationship dynamics as much, or those intimate details, because it's not just, my story as I talk about it right now on a podcast. But I think it's an important discussion, you know?
Yeah, and there's lots of there's the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, 6 weeks. Well, what about the fact that if you got yourself stitched back up, which many of us did, 6 weeks is not a magic number.
Oh my gosh. My doctor told me 6 weeks. I was like, "No, girl, we are not ready.
No, thank you.
I don't care what the stitches tell you, we are not ready."
So, on that note, we have talked on this podcast about the different types of support that are out there for things like birth injuries or recovery. But, those conversations are difficult to have, and often they are personal and very individual. But you have reference to the fact online that you have access some resources that are available to postpartum women. What are some of the things that you have ended up needing? Because I mean, our bodies go through so much. I know after each of my kids, I had never been someone who had really gone to the chiropractor. It wasn't a thing I really needed. But after the huge, like body shift, the all your weight's at the front, and then I was breastfeeding, so I was hunched over because they say it's not supposed to hurt, but it does. And so yeah, I was at the chiropractor for a long time after each of my kids because there was just such a huge change in what happened physically. So, what are some of the things that you accessed after having a baby?
One of the main things that I did was I got a referral from my doctor for pelvic floor therapy. And I think with this generation of women, I think pelvic floor therapy is becoming more normalized. And what I've learned talking about this too is that in other countries, it is just a scheduled part of after birth care, which I think it should be. It's standard, right? But it's not here in the States yet. And it's been really interesting too to have these conversations with like my mother-in-law and my mother about it because obviously their birth experience decades ago was very different than what it might be like now. And a lot of women, older women, this is generalization assumption, but a lot of them don't even know what pelvic floor therapy is or what your pelvic floor is. And so I signed up for pelvic floor therapy. And a lot of it was because of my back pain, Arlene, kind of like what you're sharing with the chiropractor is I was like, wow, yeah, I didn't expect to feel amazing, but I was like, I didn't expect to have this debilitating back pain. And you don't have a choice to just like call it quits for a while. You have to keep this human alive. And I just felt a lot of pain and discomfort. And what's been really cool about going to pelvic floor therapy is I think I only have like 3 weeks left of my physical therapy is I opted to go in person because I do live in an area where that is a resource for me. There's a lot of places that do virtual pelvic floor therapy. So if you don't have one close by, if you have internet, there is a resource for you to be accessible. I chose to go in person because what else I realized was that I needed to be around adult humans sometimes during the day instead of just my infant. And my husband, he goes to work a 9 to 5, and there are downsides to having to go to a 9 to 5, but also he gets a break. He gets to be around other adults and converse during the day. And he gets home and he's peopled out. And I'm like, I have 20 things to ask you because you're the only person I've seen all day besides our newborn. And so for me, pelvic floor therapy was also a place for me to connect with somebody outside of my house. It was something on the schedule to get out of the house for. And I actually met my first mom friend, my first local mom friend at pelvic floor therapy. I told her that we needed to schedule a play date, even though our children are still the size of potatoes and they don't really have a lot of playing to do because I needed a play date. And that was a really, amazing unexpected benefit of going to pelvic floor therapy. But seeking out those resources has been so empowering for me. And that specifically to help me get back into a movement routine. I talked about being afraid of, getting intimate after having a baby, but I was afraid of doing a lot of different physical activities because I wasn't sure if my body was ready for it. I was afraid I was going to re-injure myself. And I think getting on a schedule with pelvic floor helped introduce me back into fitness in a way that felt loving, that felt slow, that honored my injuries, and that helped me focus on form so that now I can get back into, okay, what does it look and feel like for me to be intentional about exercising again in this season of postpartum? And that was one of the greatest gifts that it gave me. It helped give me those resources. And the other thing that I'll say to every mom, whether you feel like you are struggling with postpartum depression or not, having a space or people that you can talk to about all things postpartum and motherhood is absolutely critical. I am very, very lucky in the fact that my very best friend is a therapist. And one of my other very best friends is actually a clinical psychologist who specializes in postpartum mental well being. Great resource to have after having a baby. But having somebody besides just your partner to talk to validate you, to listen to you as you go through that recovery is just absolutely vital, I think.
I think, too, Kaya, when we talk about having it all together, is someone who ended up in PT after both kids because I am, for whatever reason, really prone to tendonitis. And it turns out that if you, I don't know, do something that loosens all the connective tissues in your body, and then especially if you do it again, my kids are 16 months apart, so you can imagine how that went. And then you do a lot of repetitive stuff like holding a baby or standing up without any, like pushing yourself up with your arms because you're holding a baby or whatever, you get tendonitis in all over the damn place. And then when you go to the doctor, they say, oh, they call that nursemaid's knee or mother's thumb, which I thought was real delightful. But when you go to PT, like not only is someone being paid to pay attention to you and to take care of you, but people are on the struggle bus when they go to PT. Nobody at PT expects you to have your shit together, because if things were going perfectly, you wouldn't be there, you know? And I feel like, especially with new mothers, we ask, "How are you doing?" But we mean, "Let me see that cute baby. I don't really give a shit how you're doing." And it's so nice to engage with other adults who really do want to know how you're doing, and they want to talk about how your thumb hurts, because I made a whole human and now my thumb hurts is not like a thing, but it really fucking hurts. And normally with, repetitive strain injuries or whatever, they tell you just like, don't do that thing, which is one thing if you do it like, yeah, golfing, but what, like, I'm just not going to pick up my baby. I just won't sit down so that I never have to stand up. Like, what? Okay. Like, you are super helpful. I really appreciate this advice. So, PT, it's amazing. And also, I think I at least, like with the postpartum bleeding with the C-section, I assumed that pelvic floor therapy would be invasive and overly personal in some way, because your pelvic floor is a pretty personal thing. And it turns out it's totally not like a weird invasive thing. But after I had a kid, like, the last thing I wanted to do was think about anyone else engaging with my body in any like meaningful way.
Yeah. Like, I've met my limit, actually.
So you mentioned earlier about dressing for your inner child, and I know I have listened to some of your. You haven't podcasted in a little while, but some of your previous episodes, you talked about doing inner child work. How are you accessing your inner child when you think about being a mother?
Mm. I think it's kind of exciting to have a newborn because I feel like it just naturally kind of invites you to reflect back on yourself as a kid as you think about like, wow, I am giving this human her childhood right now. Um, what are the things that I remember from my childhood that were really special to me? What are some things that I might do differently? How can I make her feel so safe and seen in a way that I maybe wish that I had, or maybe in a way that I was? Um, and I don't know, it feels like the greatest gift to be able to go through this again, or to, like, relive childhood again now through the eyes of my own daughter, um, and I'm just really excited about it. This is the thing that I know for sure. I am gonna do things wrong in some way, right? Like, there are gonna be some things that I do that my daughter might talk to her therapist about in the future, like, guaranteed, right? Because 'Cause I'm a human. Um, and that's okay. I leave room for a lot of humanity, right? But at the same time, I think that it invites, what are the things that I really struggled with when I was a little girl, and how can I speak something different into her? And I think that it's giving me room to, like, I don't know, be creative and play again. I think so many of us adults, because we're professionals and parents now, I don't know, we stopped playing and doing things just for the hell of it because they brought us joy. And I don't want to wish away this stage of childhood, which I think this is what I've learned as a parent, is that you are constantly excited for the next phase and grieving the one that's behind you. And what a interesting place to be in. But I am excited for when we can start doing arts and crafts again, because, like, I loved creative expression when I was younger. And when I started doing my inner child work, I realized that, oh, I still really do love creative expression and drawing and painting and singing and dancing. And I can't wait to be able to do those things with my daughter as a way to, like, heal my inner child while giving her this amazing, hopefully amazing childhood that holds space for all of herself to be seen and heard and understood. And I think that I just want to really go into parenthood with that compassionate curiosity. Like, instead of just seeing this as, like, what are all the lessons I want to instill into her, is like opening myself up for, like, I can't wait to see all the things that she's going to teach me.
Is there anything in particular about parenthood that really surprised you, kind of beyond the things that we've already or talked about?
Yeah. The things that have really surprised me in parenthood. You know, I think one of the things that surprised me, and maybe I had heard about it beforehand, but I didn't know how much I could miss someone that I was living in a house with, in terms of my husband. And maybe it is something that I'd heard about before, but I feel like there are certain things you hear that don't actually land until you're in it. With those early trenches of newborn stage, um, even though, again, we were living together in the house together, I would see him every morning, every night throughout the day, but I felt like our relationship, it was like we were living together but separate, because if I had the baby, it was his chance to go and take a shower or do something for himself, and vice versa. And I think that that was something that I was not fully expecting. I mean, I knew like, oh yeah, children can put strains on relationships, but I don't think that I really knew different ways that it would. And I know that it's gonna have all different flavors of strains as our child continues to grow older. But I think that was something that I wasn't really expecting, or even really expecting how much I would grieve being married without kids while we waited the arrival of our baby girl. I was so excited to meet her, especially, once I went past my due date, I was like, get this child out of me. But I also was like, man, life is really good right now. It's been so wonderful to be married to this person and to be having the freedom and flexibility of just being married. And I really grieved that right before we had our little girl, which I actually think is a really healthy thing for people to do. And I think that that's another thing that doesn't get talked about. We don't talk about the grief in pursuit of like welcoming this human in the world, because we're taught that we just need to be grateful, especially because there's people who can't welcome children in this world. And I don't want to invalidate that. Absolutely. But I also don't want to invalidate that the grief is a real part of the process of becoming a parent.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think then at different stages too, it can happen again, right? When people have a second child potentially, then it's like you're grieving, the only childhood that child has, that they're, and then, that the second one is never going to know the same kind of attention that the first one had, that you're not going to be able to be the same kind of parent, like, yeah, at every stage, yeah, we've got lots of things that we can end up feeling bad about. But on the opposite side of that, where have you been finding joy in your journey so far?
Oh my gosh. My little girl just recently started giggling, and it is the best thing in the entire world. I am trying to
And then you just keep doing whatever it was that made her
Oh my
laugh.
gosh, I'm like, "So, her ribs are ticklish, I'm gonna keep leaning into
Yeah.
that." She loves when I sing this, like, one rap song, it always makes her laugh, so that's what we sing all the time now, and that is my favorite. I think it's just so fun at the stage that she's at, where she's, like, becoming less of a potato and more of a person, you know what I mean? And just, like, little glimmers of her personality are starting to come out, and I'm so excited to meet what version of her she's gonna wake up as every morning, because at this stage, they just change so much, and getting to share in that just pure joy with my partner is so fun.
On the days where you feel like the joy is hard to find, I know, like with a new little person, that it feels easier, but there are also a lot of days where, finding joy is hard for any of us. Motivate us. Tell us what to, like, where can we find those glimmers, or try and reconnect with that part of ourselves?
I think the first thing is, like, to hold space for yourself to feel whatever you gotta feel. Like, if you're just having a day when you need to cry, don't try to happy yourself out of it. Let yourself cry. I think that it's really important that we learn how to stop shoving down the emotions that don't feel fun, and instead we find a way to process through them and to really feel them before we move on to feeling the next thing. So, journaling historically has been a really amazing resource for me, and I'll confess, in this season of my life, journaling has not been my first go-to place. And I think for me right now, my best place for helping to process through my emotions are a few people who are very close to me, who love and trust me and are able to just witness my experience and hold space for me to process through that. So that is one of my first things, is like, first of all, don't try to happy yourself out of a bad day. Let yourself feel what you need to feel. And every time I've found that if I let myself actually feel the shitty feelings, it's easier to process through them and start feeling better. And so yeah, I guess my best piece of advice to feel better is to let yourself feel like shit first, instead of trying to gaslight yourself away from it and be like, I shouldn't feel this way. No, you can feel how you need to feel it, and then we can, start shifting our perspectives. I think a way to get back to a baseline is to always lean into gratitude once you felt whatever you need to feel, right? To lean back into gratitude, but like validate yourself a little bit, you know what I mean? And remember that not everything lasts forever. You know, what's been really interesting is before I got pregnant, I had an IUD. So I did not have a menstrual cycle for years and years and years. And I think going through pregnancy, obviously, there's lots of hormonal changes. And now letting my body kind of normalize out, I'm remembering, like, oh, I have a cycle. My moods have a cycle. And maybe the fact that I feel like a raging bitch right now is not a problem. It's just the fact that this is part of my cycle. And I think like holding space for myself to go through cycles instead of being like, oh my God, I had such a good week last week. Now I feel like the world's ending. Instead of being like, oh, you're a woman. Lean into it. Honor where you're at right now. And it's not going to last forever.
Kiah, I have to say, as someone who also had an IUD for years and then did fertility treatments, which fucks with your cycles, and then had two kids, and now am apparently entering premenopause, it turns out that once you really stop to think about where you might be in your cycle and whether you've, I don't know, eaten today or whether you've consumed any water or gone outside or whatever else, it is so easy to get so it's with both these emotional things and with the changes in your body that you were talking about, it's so easy to forget that our body is literally a living, breathing, changing organism outside of our brain and our, our experience of our body, that our body is its own physical thing, and that means that it will have its own physical needs. And I think especially once we have kids, and I spend so much fucking time and effort and money making sure that my kids are fed, because it is a nonstop, it's like feeding time at the zoo, seriously. Like, it's so easy to forget that I haven't eaten, and I have never been one of those people who could forget to eat. Like, that's not a thing in my world. And so now being in a place where I'm like, when was the last time I got more than 4 hours of sleep? When's the last time I ate anything that, and I mean, I am not at all a food shamer or a, whatever, but it turns out your body does feel better if you eat vegetables or protein or things that aren't just snatched off the corner of your kid's plate when you carry it to the kitchen, you know? Or if you sleep, or if you shower, or brush your teeth, or whatever. And
Yeah. The basics, right?
yeah, it turns out that it improves your mood a lot. And there's definitely times where it's harder to make that happen. Absolutely. But it does turn out that taking care of the physical needs of your body and paying attention to things and giving it grace can help.
I love that you said that too, because my best friend who's a therapist and she has a little girl. She's 2 years old, and she's actually going through a fertility journey right now to try to have a second. And she gave me a really great piece of advice when I was freshly postpartum. She said, make a list of all the basic baseline things that you must do during the day, and like in detail. And she said, check them off, like brushing your teeth, doing the first feeding, the second feeding, washing a bottle, whatever the thing is. And I think it's really important that whatever stage of life of parenthood you're in is to like create a baseline of like, what are the absolute necessities that need to happen today? And if that's all that happens, I'll be fine, right? Like feeding yourself, right? The things that we forget, but that are like so crucial. And I think creating a baseline, it felt so much more empowering postpartum, where I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm doing nothing. And also I'm exhausted and I feel like I'm doing so much. And just having a space to be like, oh, these are all the things that I did today to keep myself and my baby alive. And this is actually exactly what I needed to do. And I didn't need to do anything extra. Felt so freaking good just to like have that baseline check mark of like, what do I need to do to keep myself well and keep my kids well? And that's it.
Well, and I feel like, too, for so many people, I'm going to include men in this, were raised in such a, if you didn't get that gold star, you have not actually done anything kind of way. And I know so many women who are basically married to their planners or their calendars, or their planners and their calendars and their journal or whatever. that not having that thing to check off, like, cool, we're both alive at the end of the day, like, great. But if you actually look at how much it takes, how much executive function it takes, and how much work it is to keep people alive.
Yeah, and for most of our guests, they're also keeping livestock alive or crops alive, or like the bare minimum in terms of even just daily chores, both in the barn and the house. Like that's hours of work. So getting the extra to-do list done isn't going to happen every day because you don't always have the capacity. And then when one thing goes wrong in the barn or the house or both, then like that just adds a whole other element to, or the seasons change and then all of a sudden you have to start planting things or spraying things or whatever, right? Like the extra jobs then are also essential on top of the essentials that you were already doing every single day. Becomes an even bigger list. So tell us about some of your future plans. What are you saying yes to these days and what are you looking forward to?
I love this. I think that for the first time in my life, I have really savored an open calendar.
Good for you.
um, and I think that I'm really leaning to the idea of like, how can I do more with less? How can I make more impact with less time away from my family? And it's been a really exciting and interesting stage of entrepreneurship to really focus through that lens. I think I mentioned earlier about like how having a kid has given me so much clarity and direction. And I think it's less about like, oh, I want to do all the things. It's like, what are the right things? And so for me, the things I'm saying yes to right now is I am continuing to lean into speaking. I love getting to speak on stages. Number one, let's be honest, I'm a performer at heart and that is my inner child coming out. When I'm on stage, that is me holding space for my inner child to be the performer she always wanted to be. And to be able to speak to audiences and empower them in that way, especially in the agriculture community, is just so life-giving to me. And even more importantly, to be able to have the conversations I do off stage with audience members is just, it fills my cup in such amazing ways. And so I've got some really exciting speaking this summer. I'm speaking to a lot of actual FFA high school groups, so like youth ag leadership organizations, which is really exciting. Um, Behind the scenes, besides that, me and my good friend Courtney Dehoff, who's also a speaker, we are continuing to work on one of our passion projects, which is called Backroad Cowgirls, which is a TV digital series that we created that we're hoping will have a new iteration coming out soon. So, no exciting updates there. It's just another passion project that I'm working on behind the scenes. And the other thing that I'm most excited about is I just booked my next international women's retreat for 2026. And y'all are going to love this. The theme, the title of it is Moms Gone Wild.
Oh, perfection.
All right. We are going to Costa Rica in 2026 in May. And I am so thrilled. I hosted one retreat in my hometown in California, my second retreat in Ireland, and this one in Costa Rica. And it's going to be a totally different flavor. We're going to be at a resort in the jungle. And it is really about giving moms a space to feel seen, heard in community with other moms who get it, no matter where they're at in their stage of motherhood. You could be a fresh new mom, you can be a grandmother. I'm bringing my mom on the adventure. And it's a mix of relaxation and restful pampering and spa days and hot springs with a little bit of adventure. We're going to be doing some horseback riding, some waterfalls, some hiking, and also a lot of good deep inner work as well. And I just am so thrilled to create a space like this for moms. And I can't wait to see who is going to say yes to themselves and join me.
That sounds incredible.
Kiah, I'm gonna say too, we've had Courtney on the show as well. She's amazing. You guys should start a personal shopping business or like a personal branding business because I would be so on that. And I love the vibe that both of you put out there so much. And it just, for whatever reason, it just kills me that she owns a bull. Like, I don't, it just kills me. I don't know. Like,
I know. Fun fact, I come from a bucking bull family. My grandfather was in the bucking bull business for 25 years, actually. So we've had a lot of bucking bulls on the ranch. But what I love about Courtney and my style is that we are very much a yin and yang. You know, there was a trend on social media but talking about how like every friendship there's a golden retriever and a black cat. I'm the golden retriever, she's the black cat, and if you see us standing next to each other, she is almost always in head to toe black. That is like her brand, her vibe, and I am almost always in every color of the rainbow. And it works, you know?
I feel funny too because after talking to her and like I already had some real feelings about the perceptions that rodeo gets. But the number of times I have commented on posts about people going off about animals being abused, and I've been like, because the thing that stuck out to me in our interview with her, and how many years ago was this, Arlene, that we talked to her,
Maybe 2.
was about that if you put a rope around a bull's nuts, they're not going anywhere. They're definitely not jumping up and down. And also that the nuts are the valuable part on a bull because the money is made on breeding, and you're sure as shit not going to smash them. And, just that I commented on something the other day about this group that's training rats to do mind sniffing, which is just a whole other thing. It's total obsession at this point. But the idea that we would put this much work and money into livestock and then or any animals and then mistreat them is bizarre. Total aside. Sorry. Mind sniffing rats. It's amazing.
Katie's brain is a little bit like a rat maze sometimes.
Oh, a rat maze is the least of our concerns with how my brain works.
All right. Katie, do you want to do your county fair question?
Yeah. Kiah, if you could dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be?
Okay, if I could dominate a category at the county fair, it would be the oh crap, I really this feels like a lot of pressure to me, okay? Can I say something before I make my decision? County fairs are very important to me because county fairs and state fairs. One of the fun facts about me is I met my husband at the Kentucky State Fair, my first week on the job in Kentucky. The same day I was ambush makeovered by the local TV station in Louisville, Kentucky. But what makes that even better is the fact that my mom and dad met on junior fair board at our local county fair. And my oldest brother met his wife at Jimmy's Watering Hole, which is the bar at our local county fair. And my younger older brother met his wife working at the Barnyard Cafe at our local county fair. So maybe that is my answer. If I could dominate a category at the local county fair, it would be matchmaking at the county fair.
Yes. Yeah. All milestones revolve around.
Yes. That's where romance grows.
Yes. Now I need to ask, was there any fair food or decor elements pulled into any of the weddings of any of these couples who met at fairs?
You know, I feel like that was a missed opportunity, really, truly.
I mean, food trucks.
Not specifically. We all got married in my family. We all got married on my family's ranch, and so it was ranchy in lots of ways that a county fair is ranchy. So I think naturally it lent itself that way. But I actually have an aunt and uncle who are concessionaires, who we lovingly call carnies. So they travel to county fairs all over the West Coast. They have food booths, Texas donuts, cotton candy, kettle corn, all sorts of things. So all of my jobs through all of my youth and through college was slinging food at the county fair. So none of them specifically in the weddings, but that really missed opportunity there, I gotta say.
There. Use that for the anniversaries or something.
There you go.
So, Kiah, best place to find love on a fairgrounds? And like a good, solid, lasting love, not like,
I gotta say the livestock barns, you know, like I just feel that's not where any of us met our partners. Maybe that's a terrible answer, but as someone who grew up in the barns showing, I just feel like some of the best friendships and relationships in general were started in those barns. You know, scoop and poop. There's nothing romantic than mucking a stall, you know?
Yeah. Hair dryers and clippers, right?
Yes, yes.
All right, we will move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you are a listener and want to submit yours, you can use our speak pipe or send us an email and we will play it out or read it out for you. Katie, what do you have to cuss and or discuss this week?
well, I was getting a glass of water before we recorded, and this is like the most ridiculous first world inattentive brain type issue ever. But when you fill a glass at the, our fridge has an ice and water dispenser, which I deeply love, which I got because our daughter is obsessed with ice water. And I just got so effing sick of filling ice cube trays, refilling ice cube trays, finding empty ice cube, on and on.
Those of us who don't have ice dispensers know your pain. Yes.
Yes, I'm sure you grasp this. When you fill a cup with water, if you get distracted, it becomes immediately obvious that there is too much water very quickly. When you have an ice dispenser and you get distracted, ice will just pile up inside the dispenser part. And then when you do notice ice and you move your cup, ice just comes flying out everywhere. And there's no way to catch it because your glass is already full. And
Is there ice melting all over your kitchen right now, Katie?
let's just say I picked it up.
Oh, well, okay, that's responsible of you. I thought maybe you had a dog who liked ice cubes or something. You would go and skittering around and collect them.
No, they won't eat them and they're outside anyway. Yeah, I don't know why solids pile up and act like solids. Let's just put it that way. It's just frustrating. Liquids are much more demanding of attention. Anyway, um, Kaya, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
Okay, the thing I want to cuss and discuss today is back to the body conversation. I mentioned that PT is what's helped me get back into like a movement, regularly finding ways to strengthen my body as a mom because this baby's getting heavier. And one of the best forms of motivation that I have found for myself when it comes to getting into an exercise routine is buying myself new athleisure wear, new workout clothes. And postpartum, I was like, I don't even know what size I am. I just know that these Amazon pregnancy leggings are not going to cut it for me anymore. And so I went to one of our local stores. It's a big box chain. It was Athleta, for anybody that's familiar with Athleta. I was like, I have a body. I have to try things on. Okay. I don't want to do the thing where I order them online and then have to send them back because I'm not going to send them back. They're going to sit in my closet and they're never going to get sent back. It's
Then they'll have the tags on them and they will just live there.
1000%. They're never going back until once every 2 decades we have a yard sale. So I need to go in person. And I went in, and the things that really grinds my gears, really chaps my ass, if you will, is brands who carry extended sizing but do not carry them in store. They only have them online, as if, like, excuse me, if I am a plus size woman, you don't think that I deserve to try something on my butt to see if it fits? Why do you even have extended sizing if you're not going to actually have them in your store? I mean, I got to give them 1 star for having the extended sizes. That counts for something. But if you actually want to support the women who shop at your store in those extended sizes, give us a space to try them on. It's some bullshit. It's just like another form of discrimination. And I am tired of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, I mean, in any size, then at least if I can try it on and the color I want is not there, then I can go and order it for sure. But yeah, don't have the thing that you can't even. If I get myself to a store, I want to be able to try on the thing because that's otherwise I could have just ordered it and clicked the link and it would show up on my doorstep.
100%. Yes.
Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
So I didn't have one before we started, but of course we had lots of good conversations today. And so mine was around where you talked about, letting yourself feel your feelings and then, like move on from it, and how hard I find it as a parent to just let my kids feel their feelings and especially as they get older. And I mean, they have big feelings and that's fine. And they should be able to have those feelings and deal with them in the way that they want to. But, like a parent, I want to get in there and fix it, or the feelings make me feel feelings that I, feel uncomfortable with. And so, yeah, it's just the learning to ride that out. And as long as they're not hurting themselves or anyone else, I have to let that go and learn to, and then touch back in with them later, discuss it, all that kind of stuff. But in the moment, I kind of just want to shut it down because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But apparently, it's not all about me.
Tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not all about us.
Katie looks apparently, well, I don't think it is, but
Have been doing it wrong.
depends on the day. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you remind our listeners where to find you online if they want to see you in hospital underwear or join your retreat? It's a full spectrum of opportunities here.
Full spectrum. Let me tell you, you're going to get a flavor of it all. Well, first, thank you, ladies, so much for having me in this space and for just having conversations like this. I really appreciate you having this platform to do so with women. I like to hang out online on Instagram the most. So I am a coach_Kiah, Kiah on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well as Coach Kiah. And if you want to learn more about my retreat or any of the goodness, or maybe bring me in as a speaker, you can visit coachkiah.com and there'll be more information for you there. And if you'd like to dive down into the archives of my podcast, you can check it out at Climbing with Coach Kiah on all platforms.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, thanks again, Kiah.
Likewise.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.